I'm Dwayne Brummett. He's Ali Alberigo, and this is the School Owner Talk podcast. We're back. Dwayne Brummett here with Ali Alberigo, schoolownertalk.com. Ali, great to be with you, sir.
Great to be with you too, Dwayne. It's funny. You're like one of the few people who actually pronounce my name correctly. Like everyone,
really?
even good friends, they say it wrong. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Knowing how to pronounce somebody's name correctly and spelling it, especially when you're messaging them, two really important things, I believe.
You kind of saying that because I make mistakes on your name all the time.
Well, it's not just you.
No.
It's everybody makes mistakes on my name.
Yeah, when I type it though, sometimes it's just quick, boom, and then I'm like, I go back. I mean, half of my text messages and posts, when I go back like an hour or two later, I'm like, what was that? People would think that I was drinking maybe when I made the post. Just say things that sound totally logical in my mind at that moment or sound clear, and then I reread it and I'm like, this made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Even that whole text to speech thing.
Yeah.
I one time, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. Somebody was asking about our program, and it was through Facebook Messenger. And I said, "What age are your kids or your child?" And she said, I think she either said 5 or 6. And so I text messaged back, because she was asking the day and times. And I said, well, our 5 and 6-year-old program is on this day at this time, or this day at this time. And then I said, which time would work best for you? And then I hit send, and then I saw it and I go, oh crap. And I didn't know at the time that, maybe this wasn't even available, that you could actually delete,
right,
unsend or whatever. But sometimes that doesn't matter because it still goes through and they see it.
Yeah.
But text to speech said, our 5 and sexual class is.
Wow. I know everybody knows though. It's so funny. Like, I see those funny videos or Instagram posts where some guy says something really, really like sexual to this new girl that he's dating. And then if she responds negatively and says, how dare you say that? He goes, oh my God, that was not meant to say that. It was supposed to be. And it was text to speak, that kind of thing. So they write it off that way. So today's an exciting thing today, right? Like we have some really great stuff, some topics. What, you want to introduce it or?
Yeah. Basically the topic is passion, purpose, or complacency. And the whole premise, I think, for me behind this topic is you and I were chatting about, building our business when we first built our business, and the fact that, we were really very passionate, and we had a purpose in getting to where we wanted to go with our business. And I think that the whole concept that an object in motion stays in motion, right? That law, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest. It's so important to understand in our businesses, because there are times that we can, and we do, I don't know about you, I think I do, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, that we've been complacent. We chose complacency over purpose and passion. First, before we dive into any of those, things, what is your initial thought with the whole topic of passion, purpose, passion, and complacency?
Well, just to give a little bit of the listeners and watchers, our followers that watch and listen to our podcast, you and I quite often, we do a podcast every week. This is our 358th podcast, I think it is, 358 or 59. And, so we'll talk in the beginning of the week and go, hey, what do you think's a good topic that's relevant that you want to speak about this week? And you and I will throw out some ideas, and then we pick one that we think is the best. So we were kind of talking about different topic ideas, and this one came up because our conversation, about, how do we stay in the game and how do we stay relevant? And you came up with the title, right? Because, you were like, passion, purpose, complacency, like, because we all fall into those traps at some time or another.
Well, what prompted the idea for me was I was having a conversation with my head instructor, and we were talking about our storm team, which is our junior instructors, if you will. Those are the individuals that learn how to teach so that they can, be employable.
Right.
And his thought was, it's hard. Like he was saying, it's difficult for him to utilize them in a way because he goes, if I'm not teaching. So for instance, we've got another guy, he's really ready to, he's ready to learn how to be the head instructor. Right.
Right.
And he is a paid instructor. And he said, if I put him in charge, what do I do?
Right.
He goes, because if I don't put him in charge and he makes those mistakes and I help correct them and guide him, then he's not going to become the instructor that we need or want him to become. But if I do put him in charge and allow him run the classes, he goes, what do I do?
Right.
He goes, because I am the head instructor, I'm responsible for everything that happens. I'm going to have to, whatever is not done right, I'm going to have to correct, not only correct the instructor, but I'm also going to have to correct any of the students that learn the material incorrectly or whatever it is. And I go, man, I can relate. I said, I totally can relate, because I can remember when I started stepping back and giving you guys more control.
Right.
And I had to literally step off the floor. I couldn't be on the floor. I said, how many times did I step on your toes?
Right.
And want to engage. In fact, I did engage. And you weren't completely wrong. There was just aspects that needed to be fixed. I didn't go about it the right way. I stepped on your toes. And then I found myself on the sidelines going, what am I here for?
Yeah.
Like my passion, my purpose was out on that floor. And that passion and purpose pulled me, not pushed me. And there's a reason I say this. It pulled me to the destination that I wanted to go, where I wanted my school to be. And he brought up the fact, like, okay, but what am I supposed to do? And I go, man, that's a great question. That is a great question, because I found myself in my business plenty times going, what is my passion now?
Yeah.
What is my purpose now? And even with that passion and purpose, sometimes moving to the next level, okay, I'd like to be at this many students instead of this many. I found myself, when I reached that position, I didn't do what we teach in our black belt success system,
right?
Which is, you all know that from Tom Callos, right? Where it's know what you want, have a plan, and a success coach, take consistent action. But here's the thing, review your progress and then renew your goals. Or in that case, what is the next thing that you're going to, what's your next purpose? What's your next passion that you're going to work towards, that you're going to utilize to pull yourself towards that goal or that thing? And so that's where this was really born out of, okay, this is a topic that I'm sure resonates with all of us at some point in our martial arts career, where we get to a level, we get to the X goal, and then we find ourselves going, okay, whew, got there. Now I can take a break. The problem with being complacent, though, and we can get into this, but just as an overview, the problem is, again, object in motion stays in motion, tends to. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. And that at rest can be months, or even worse, can be years. And what a detriment that is to your business.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And I remember myself particularly going through that. I still go through it, actually. I notice that at times I am out on the floor and I have 3 or 4 black belts and assistants out there with me. The minute I step on the floor, they become wallflowers. They disappear into the shadows. They let me do my thing, so to speak, but they also don't step up and help me do my thing. So that's something that I'm working on teaching them more how to do that. But you're right, though. And it was hard for me. When I had multiple locations, my job, my passion shifted to training other instructors and shifted towards helping others and making them the best teachers they could be. However, then I lost a lot of the fun that I used to love, which was the teaching. That was what, and it's still to this day, I enjoy that the most out of anything.
Mhm.
Like, running the school and systemizing the school and all the business things, I enjoy that. But I enjoy most teaching. Like I like being out on the floor, giving away my thoughts and wisdom of what I've learned over the multiple years that I've been doing this. So it's a hard transition for many to just step away and just teach the teachers and then let them do their thing. And the most important, they will always have their interpretations of what it is, how they heard it, how they do it, what they like better. So having that issue of control, which I'm a control freak, I want it done my way. I don't mind them injecting their own personality into it, but I don't want to change it because I say to my guy, look, we've been teaching this move this way for the last 30 years. Why are you changing it? It works. It's always worked. It still works. Why do you got to put your own flair on it? Just that's why traditional martial artists keep things very pure and in nature, right? So I'm the same way with the way I run my school. Like I'll give you an example. We do perfect attendance awards in my school. I share this with a lot of people. So if they attend, let's just say youth through adult, attend 12 classes a month, they'll get a little 6-inch trophy and a certificate. Once they've done that 4 times, they turn those 4 trophies in and they get a 12-inch trophy. And then they repeat the process until they have 3 big trophies, and then they turn everything in and they get a plaque. However, what my guys have been doing with any of the older kids, 14 and on up to adult, they've just been giving them the certificate, and they've played it down because in their mind, adults don't care about this stuff. So they're like, here's your perfect attendance. It was kind of like in a joking manner, and the people would grab it and they stopped giving out the trophies without asking my permission. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, oh, well, we're just, no one wants them. And I asked the class, who would rather have a trophy? And everyone raised their hand and said, I would. And I said to my staff, like, this is why we do this. Because just because they're an adult and maybe you don't want it or you don't appreciate it or you don't like it, doesn't mean that they don't. So I'm like, you don't change my system because you have a feeling, you follow it to the letter of the law and you do it. So that's a hard part, is when you start being the manager and you see this kind of, I don't want to say decline or degradation of your systems and your values and your philosophies because other people have a different idea.
Yeah. Well, and look, I think that there's you as the owner may have a different passion
Mm-hmm.
and a different purpose in your school than the other instructors do.
Right.
And the goal for us is to impart that purpose and passion, communicate that in such a way, and raise up instructors that are on board with that purpose and passion in the first place.
Right.
Not that they're not going to veer off from time to time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's all your fault, but what I'm saying is this is a good lesson for all of us
Yeah.
to really be very good at communicating what our core values are, the mission at your studio, or missions at your studio, which then I think really and we've had this before where we've talked about this, is that's where, being very good at communicating those things and imparting those things throughout everything inside of your school makes everything runs so much better when communication is very, very clear. So with that being said, clear is kind.
Yeah, you've said that. I have that written down right here on my desk.
Yeah, being very clear is kind. And I don't know about you. I remember, and I remember going, man, I want 100 students, right? Because I just wanted 100 students. And it's okay to just want what you want, by the way. You don't have to justify it.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that there was a financial increase, potentially,
right,
with having 100 students over 50. And then the same thing. Well, I want 150 students. Now I want 200 students. Now I want 250 students. But then the question becomes, okay, when we're getting close to that, what's the next goal? What, after you review that progress, you need to renew that goal, that so that that passion and purpose doesn't die out, so that you don't get complacent. Because if you allow that complacency, which I have, seep in, then it is, you read the book by Jim Collins, Good to Great, right?
Yeah.
Where he talks about the flywheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of liken that, when he was talking about that, to Bob Barker's Price is Right's wheel.
Right.
And you watch them and they have to grab that wheel, and it is so hard in the beginning to get that wheel to move. But if you were to expend all that energy to get that wheel to move, and then periodically just kind of hit it and keep hitting that wheel to keep the momentum, then you're not complacent. It's just a lot easier to keep it moving than to let it stop moving and then have to start the whole thing again. Now, I don't know about you, COVID, not to blame COVID, but COVID did a number on the opportunities for instructors at our school. We did lose some instructors over COVID, didn't hire them back. We also lost storm team members that were learning how to be the next instructors.
Right.
That eventually they left. So there's a hole. I've got like a whole year and a half ish type hole that I'm, looking at. Wow, we really don't have the bench strength that we had before.
Right.
Where we had that, bench strength before.
Yeah.
And so, we're it wasn't because of complacency that we didn't have bench strength.
Right.
But it was with the man-made virus, whatever, I don't know, but it was because of that situation that we, have that hole. But you very well could have that hole being complacent, going, okay, yeah, I got all the staff members I need, and then not continue to build new staff members. Or I reach that level, and then you start to go, well, I don't have to continue, building.
Yeah. It's interesting though, like when it's funny, we just went out to breakfast like I do every Wednesday, right? And we were talking about COVID. We mentioned, how we lost so many people that were high ranks, like, people right before their black belt, or like you said, leadership team or storm team members. And then they just literally disappeared, like never to be seen again. And I thought it was a very strange thing. And we also talked about how I think, like, during COVID, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist or anything. It's just a thought that there was like a big mind wipe. Like I had kids that were out of my dojo for, let's say, 9 months, 10 months. They hadn't been physically in the dojo, but they still kept training on Zoom, and they had forgotten, like, and they were with me 3-4 years in my dojo. When they came back, they literally forgot, like, how to bow, where to go, where did they put their shoes, where the bathrooms were, like almost as if their brain had been wiped clean of things. I don't know. I guess it's just like someone said on Facebook the other day, like, who knows why people fear change so much? And I gave an analogy that I thought of recently. It's like when you're on a boat and the boat waves are just kind of coming in and out, and you're kind of unstable, right? Some people from that wave movement, the motion, they get motion sickness and they have to take Dramamine or they get nauseous, right? You do as well.
Yeah.
And but once you get used to it and your body starts to stabilize, it gets used to that movement, right? When you get on dry land, you actually feel the movement still for quite some time. Like when I would fly to Japan and be on a plane for 18 hours, when I got to my room in my apartment, I could feel the movement of the plane still. I used to think it was Japan, like the Japan moved, but it was the plane, right? So what I said was, people don't like to be on unstable ground. So they don't like change because that brings them on unstable ground, whether it's good change or bad change, it's any change. And they're feeling this uneasiness, right? So that's where it's a big, big problem for people when change occurs, and they fight it because they just don't want to deal with it. And I think that's a great analogy when it comes to people resisting change. Right. And I think that happens in our business as well. Like when, and that's what COVID was change. It was a whole new paradigm, right? Like it really changed everything.
No, it certainly does. It certainly did.
Yeah.
And look, your passion and your purpose may change, and it's
Right.
okay if it changes. I
Yeah.
know that when I first began, I mean, my underlying passion and purpose has always been there, but there's different levels of those passions and
Hmm.
purposes that change. You know, my first passion and purpose was the fact that I really wanted to be able to have my, allow my Christianity to shine and martial arts simultaneously.
Right.
From there, it was, man, now I want to develop these kids. And I always had primarily kids. We still do today. I
Yeah.
want to develop these kids to become, these rock star human beings in
Mm.
their life and have influence and purpose on them, help them find whatever they're passionate about and what their purpose is as well. And then when I started developing staff members, it was like, wow, I really want them to be able to, especially if they want to help other people by teaching martial arts, I want them to feel the things that I felt, when I saw a kid get it.
Yeah.
And when I had, somebody be able to actually break the board or overcome this challenge or stand up in front of the class and do a speech, like what that for, like, okay, so did the kid themselves become something even bigger when they did that? Yeah, but for me it was like, wow, that was so cool. Like I get jazzed out of that, right?
Yes.
And so my purpose and passion had to start to switch and change, where it was from, okay, student to now potential instructor to instructor, now head instructor. I've got that second location that we're looking for a place to open,
Mm.
and it's going to be really now focusing on him and growing him into, a studio owner as
Yeah.
opposed to just a karate teacher. So my passion has switched or changed or leveled up, if you will. But it's not like dramatically different. It's just
Right.
shown or appears in a different format now.
Yeah, and also too, you pile years of experience on top of what you started off with when it was just pure passion, and then you kind of layer that passion, or put on top of, skim coat the top of it, problems and issues that you deal with, frustrations, running a business, dealing with families, yada yada yada, and that kind of goes and builds little layers of resentment on top of running the school. So it kind of, it gets rid of, or lowers your passion a little. So that's a big thing that I think instructors go through as well, is that's where complacency comes in, right? Where I think we become complacent for a few reasons, right? But we start to become complacent because we've been doing the same thing over and over again, day in and day out. We start to be complacent. But there are also those things where we deal with frustrations.
Mhm.
And, like we sat at breakfast, there's 7 of us, and we all have a different story this week about how some parent did something ridiculous. Like, I had a parent who was mad at us because we had a little warrior test, 2 to 4 year olds, and we had a group of kids come in. And my one guy took out this one new kid who's very hard to handle and put him in a separate room with an instructor and did a one-on-one. Now, you would think that that would be really good, except the kid felt like he was ostracized and he was crying that he couldn't be with his friends.
Right.
And then the parents saw that and they were annoyed at me. I didn't do it. My instructor did it. That was his call because he wanted to have a good test and a good class for the majority. But I had to deal with it, and I have a meeting tonight. I'm going to have to deal with more of just explaining why we did it and not to be upset. It's not going to happen often. So those things that we go through also build up this lack of tolerance for situations, right? And we start to become hardened in a way, right? I mean, I don't know. Do you feel that way too? Sometimes you're like, I can't believe this idiot. Like I used to say, and I'm being mean and facetious, but I would say like, oh, these parents these days are just so stupid. Like when maybe it was just one parent that acted improperly. So do you feel that way sometimes? Like that lowers your your passion?
I've gone through waves. So
Yeah.
yeah, at times it has, at other times, you know, it hasn't. And I think, well, one, and we talked a little bit about this 2 or 3 podcasts ago. We talked about that book, Crucial Conversations, which would
Yeah.
help somebody in that situation by reading that
Mhm.
book.
Right.
But you know, I always say, especially at the beginning of a black belt test, is, hey, look, parents, your kid's going to break down, they're going to cry, they're going to be exhausted, they may want to quit. Um, this, and it's going to be hard for you as a parent to sit there and watch that.
Right.
And if it is really that hard, then I would just ask you to go ahead and just walk out,
Right.
catch your breath, come back in if you
Right.
want to.
Right.
Um, because what better place for your kid to learn how to learn how to do those things in an atmosphere where they've developed a relationship with their instructors over the last 4 years,
Right.
and people that actually love and care about them, and they're going to walk through this with them, but they're going to have to do it on their own,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally. They're going to have to do it on their own, even though we're going to encourage them.
Yeah.
They're still going to have to do it on their own. And it's amazing how many parents, after I communicate that to, even though they don't like it, they abide by it.
Yeah. You know, one thing in their defense, I have to say, like, we live in a very litigious, confrontational, society where we are, it's myself and my daughter, and then there's the teacher. And if the teacher doesn't do well by my daughter, I'm mad at the teacher or the school or the people. And when I say doesn't do well by my daughter, maybe is not equipped to teach my daughter in because my daughter might have a certain learning ability, not disability, but like they learn in a specific way.
Sure.
So, but I've found that when I am able to make the parents understand that we're a team, it's not my team and you, it's us and parents and the kid and us together as a team. Our goal, people don't realize it, is to make their kids the best. Like who wouldn't love having someone who shows that much personal interest in their child or even in their family dynamic because you're helping that kid be a better kid. Parents are like, he's not listening at home. Okay, I'll have a talk with so and so. Like our goal is to make them better, like you said before, better humans so that they could function in society at a high level. And who would not love that? Like you very rarely, maybe coaches on sports teams sometimes feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And they help their kids and mentor them outside the sport a little, give them mentorship, have a role model. But parents sometimes feel confrontational, like it's them and their kid, and we're on the outside. We did something wrong. We didn't handle it correctly. We taught them a lesson the way they normally wouldn't have taught, and they get upset with us. So that's a big frustration in I think in teaching in general.
Well, you know what I use, and I learned this from my wife because we were fighting one time, and in the middle of the fight, she said, you do realize that I'm not your enemy.
Right.
And just her saying that was like,
Yeah.
like mentally, I did a stop, like, yeah, you're not my enemy. What in the
Right.
world? Why am I arguing with you? Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. But and so I actually utilize that
Yeah.
if I have to with a parent. You do realize that I'm not your enemy.
That would be a great way to start a confrontation. Like in Crucial Conversations, the book, quite often they ask you to fall on common ground. So the common ground is you and your wife are in disagreement, but you're on common ground. You love each other. Like, by the way, you could be fighting with her full blast and some guy could come up and try to push her and attack her. Immediately you would turn and defend her. That's why cops have a hard time with domestic disputes, because a husband or wife could be beating their spouse to death, and then the cop steps in and stops it, and the person will turn and together they'll attack the police officer. It's because they don't realize. So I love your comment. Imagine starting every confrontation with you. I want you to realize before we get started that we're on the same team and we have the same goals, right? diffuse a good majority of all the problems. And I kind of did that recently with a parent using skills out of that book, Crucial Conversations. But what a great lesson that was.
Yeah. And so really with regards to your passion and your purpose for your school, I don't think that any I don't even want to say successful, but for lack of a better term, any successful, and you guys can all define success to whatever you want to define it as.
Right.
I don't mean 300 students, but any successful martial arts school owner has a passion, has a purpose. I would just say keep that passion and purpose in front of you. Once you reach that goal of whatever that passion and purpose is, review the progress, like we talk about in the Black Belt Success System, and renew those goals to get you to the next level where you want to go. Now, when I say review your progress, what I'm specifically talking about is you looking back from where you started and everything that you have accomplished or gained in that time frame to where you're at now. So if you started at point A and now you're at L, you can look back at all the other letters,
right,
and go, yeah, wow, I accomplished B, I accomplished C and D, and boy, I really grew at E. And so when I say review your progress, I really mean look back at the gains, because here's the thing: in order to keep yourself moving, I believe, in order to keep yourself moving with purpose and passion, it's not looking to you've looked at the horizon before, right?
Yeah.
You look at the horizon, you get in your car, you start driving, right? Do you ever reach the horizon?
No.
No, you never reach the horizon. Now, is it a good navigator? Sure, but you never reach the horizon. And that's where I think sometimes with our purpose and passion, what we do is we look at the goal that's ahead of us, that horizon, and we sometimes even just get defeated and discouraged because we keep looking forward at our goal. And when you do that, when obstacles hit, sometimes it's hard to get past those, or you go, man, it's just so far down the road, I'm never going to get there.
Yeah.
True success and true motivation, I really believe, is looking backwards, reviewing your progress, going, wow, I accomplished this. Whoa, I did get through that. Man, I can remember in COVID, number one, I was looking back at things that have happened at the studio up until that point.
Yeah.
And I had to come to the conclusion that if God wanted me to be closed, it's two of them stick out primarily in my life that I can remember, I would have been closed.
Yeah.
And I won't speak about them on air, just because, they're bad.
Right.
I had nothing to do with either one of them, but both of them were linked to my school.
Right.
And so I had to really look back at the progress that I went through this and we survived. I went through that and we survived. I mean, there's small other ones too. So I knew, and you helped keep me sane too, don't get me wrong. Because I was freaking out for the first couple of weeks easily.
Well, we both helped each other there.
But I knew that if I've made it through these things, I can make it through this.
Right.
And so when you guys are looking at your purpose and your passion, when, again, going back to the Black Belt Success System, reviewing that progress means looking back at the things that you've already accomplished, because by doing that, you gain a lot of confidence in yourself.
Right.
Number one, going, wow, I thought that was kind of trivial, but now when I look back at that was pretty much, that was a good accomplishment.
Yeah.
Two, when you gain that confidence, or by going through those things, you also gain more competency.
Yeah.
Now you are more competent in that area, and you know how to handle that even more, which then gives you more confidence for your future.
Right.
And so, in your purpose and passion, in as much as it's a driving force to where you want to go, and again, it might change once you get to where you wanted to go. it is important to look back. And that whole concept that I just spoke about looking back at
Yeah.
your gains, is from Dan Sullivan's book, The Gap and the Gain, because he specifically talks about that, where people are always looking at the horizon, looking forward. And that's why they get defeated so often, is because they keep going, man, I'm just not getting any closer. I'm not getting any
Right.
closer.
Right.
I even do that with my weight loss clients. I go, okay, so, again, this is the funny part. These are my weight loss clients, right?
Yeah.
I ask them, what were your gains this week? After explaining them about the gap and the gain, the
Right.
gain is looking back. What did you gain? What are the victories? And the gap is the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. We don't focus on the gap. We focus on the gains. When we plan the gap out, like I have a lady, she wants to lose 55 pounds by April 1st, actually March 31st, because then she wants to start training for a 10K. So we broke it down just like you do. Okay, we want to lose 55 pounds. We have this many weeks. We know that we got to lose 2.964 pounds each week. I go, is that doable? She looked at me. She goes, oh my gosh, yes, that's doable. I said, okay.
Awesome.
So we have the gap measured out.
Right.
What we have to lose every single week. But we look back at the gains, and I'll say, okay, what did you gain this week? This past week? Oh, well, I did eat my 6 small meals, and I did drink all my water, and I got my walks in, or whatever it is, or we went to this party and there was cake there, and I looked at it and go, no, my goals are bigger than that cake.
Awesome.
And I'm like, I go, those aren't trivial things, especially when you've got a goal to lose weight. That's not trivial.
Right.
Looking back at that is what we call a non-scale victory. I mean, maybe it's not a victory on the scale, but it's a victory in creating the correct habits.
Yeah.
And so I say all that to talk about, again, reviewing your progress and then renewing your goals. When you review your progress, don't forget to go look back at the gains that you have made, the competencies that you've created, the courage that you now have to move forward to the next goal that is going to drive your passion and purpose.
Yeah. I like what you said, though. And I'm thinking of an interview I just saw with Lou Ferrigno. And, he always says that, necessarily losing weight is not necessarily losing weight on the scale. He said that, for years he would train and diet and his weight would go up, but his belt side would go down by 3 or 4 notches. Right. So he said it really is. And when you say the word gains and you kind of talk about that, sometimes my mind goes to like gaining weight, but a gain is not necessarily gaining weight. It's gaining knowledge and experience and willpower and so on. I want to tell you about a little spin on what you had just said about all this positive motivational, stuff about passion. I want to also comment to a lot of the people, because we're getting great comments here, great conversations, good stuff. People like what we're talking about. Quite often when we talk about topics like this, it's not a system or how to get more students or how to do this, but these are the things that keep people alive and keep them going for a long period of time in the martial arts. But I also wanted to mention not to let people take away your passion. I think that quite often, I've been doing this for 32 years this year, going on 32 or going on 33. I started in 91. I remember there were periods of time, like probably within the last 7 years, that I had a group of people who were involved with my demo team, and they were parents and they were cliquey. It was really bad. Like, it developed a really bad clique in my school, where even my daughter, who was on the demo team, would not be invited to demo team parties where they would get together, and they wouldn't invite my daughter because my daughter is a product of myself, and they wanted to bash me, talk negatively, have bad things to say. So my daughter couldn't be there because she'd come back and tell me, and they wouldn't invite the people that I was close with because they would have shut them down. So it became this really bad clique. So I got to a point in my career where I was like, I didn't want to be at my dojo anymore. Like, there was a point, and I think even maybe you and I have had conversations about this, where I was like, Dwayne, maybe I'll just sell everything. Like, I have a lot of real estate. I'll sell my buildings and close my schools, or sell my schools and liquidate all my equipment and get out of it, because I just don't like it anymore. And I got to a point where my passion had been like a candle put out, because people that I was surrounded by, I allowed them to get to a point of power, or they got away with things because I was just not looking to fight and argue. And they started to make things really bad. Like where my main instructor, Ryan, who is still with me, and we would be ready to go, roaring and ready to go. Like, wow, this is going to be a great day. And this group of people would walk through the door, and both of our faces would drop and our attitudes would go away and our passion would dissolve. So I want to make sure that people, if you have negativity in your school and you have people that are not happy with what you do, suggest to them or get rid of them, but like say to them, listen, either we get on the same page or you're going to have to leave. Because you have a great saying, and you say it all the time. It's like, dojo is your happy place.
This is my happy house.
Yeah, it's your happy house,
and
right?
If you're not happy, I'm not the one that's leaving.
Right, exactly. And but that's hard though, right? Like I have a friend who's a client right now who's having an issue with a parent, and the parent has 2 kids in the program, and they really don't like him as an instructor. So they go to only the other instructors when they're teaching, even though it's his school. They don't train with him. They don't like him. But for the last week and a half, he's been in turmoil. He's got anxiety over it. He's having nightmares about it. His stomach is upset because he's having to deal with it. And he has a meeting coming up with these people, and he's just like, he doesn't want to deal with this meeting. He doesn't deal with confrontation well. I deal with confrontation very well. However, I don't enjoy it, but I'll suck it up and I'll go and say, hey, let's have this conversation. And then try to use skills to repair the damage. But I get where he's at. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like, people.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question is, if that was cancer in your body that was making you feel that bad, and all you had to do was cut it out. Like you didn't even need any other treatment, but the fact that if it was just removed from your being, would you do it?
Right.
And the answer every single time would be what?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So it's the exact same thing. It just happens to be a human being or human beings. And you're right. It is difficult. But I think the conversation is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And he needs to go, I believe he needs to go into that with the mindset of, I would love for you guys to stay. This is how we're going to do it. And if you're not willing to do it, that's okay. We will just cancel everything today.
Right.
And no harm, no foul. We'll just part ways.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the reason is I think I did this, right? So many times I allowed those parents and even students to be the buyer of my program.
Right.
No longer do I let people be the buyer of my program. I'm the buyer of them.
Right.
And there's a different mindset with that. But I had to get beaten up. I had to get talked to. I had to get stepped on. I had to get talked about. I had to, like, so many things that we've all gone through as martial artists that, going back to what our topic is, that have helped to destroy or pause or whatever our passion and our purpose at that time. But going through all of those things allowed me to maybe get more callous, like you said, but really start to build boundaries that I'm willing to do and put up with, and boundaries that I'm not willing to do and I'm not willing to put up with. And learning, that's another Dan Sullivan concept, is being the buyer.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I guess when I hear that, there is a side of me that, is the half empty cup, right? When I hear, because we all struggle to get people to come in and join, and then we've had on my last podcast, we did our 100th episode anniversary with Gus. And we had guests come in, and I was just listening to it in the car on the way here. And we had Herb Perez, and Herb had said, you don't come in and join my school. You come in and ask to join my school, and we accept you if you're the right fit. But I think for many people, they're just struggling to get people in the door and to make and pay their bills and make a living, that we end up accepting people that we shouldn't have. Like I recently have had a few parents, and by the way, I want to admit this is very painful and hard to do, where I had a mom of 3 kids, and my tuition is $150 a month on our basic program. So it's like $450 a month. She said, would you work us a deal? I said, well, we do give off a 20% discount on the 3rd member. So it came to I went to like $400 per month. And she said, which is like what, $4,800 for the year for all 3, not including gear and all the other stuff. So she came back with, I'll give you $2,500. And I was like, I at first I really didn't know what she meant. And then I asked her, and she said, oh, I'll only pay you $2,500. And I said, well, that's just not going to work. But I thought to myself, like, $2,500, do I not take money? Like, if someone offered me $2,500, would I take it? But you have to think to yourself, are those the type of parents that you want in your school? Are those the type of people that are going to negotiate on everything? And then talk about the deal they got and the negotiation that they did
Yes.
to the others, and create this poison. So I had to send them away. I also had another mother. I talked about it a few weeks ago with you and I, and it was another mother who just said, we have in our tuition at Purple Belt and above is $179 a month. And she was like, well, I don't want to pay that. And I'm like, I'm confused. I don't know what you mean. Well, we want to downgrade to the other program. I go, but you can't downgrade. You're a Purple Belt. You can't go backwards in time. Well, and then she got nasty. We stuck with you through COVID, and when you did this, and when you moved here, and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, listen, I thought you would have said thank you for that, because we gave your son a place to stay during COVID and things for him to do. And but right away they turned on me, but I held my ground. Unfortunately, you lose that $180, right? And you're like, wow, wouldn't I rather pay my cable bill? But you got to say to yourself, like, I don't want to tolerate that type of mentality.
Yeah, and that goes back to we did a podcast. Gosh, it was probably 3 years ago, even on boundaries.
Yeah.
And you could go to schoolownertalk.com, and in the search bar type in boundaries, and I'm sure it comes up.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, we do. We did like social media boundaries, a whole bunch of different stuff. So you probably can find that podcast. But yes, that's one aspect of being, allowing. And I'm glad, because like in the first part of your conversation, bringing those incidences up, you said I allowed X, Y, and Z to happen, right?
Right.
And that's just it. As the school owner, whatever happens in those 4 walls, we allow to happen. It is our responsibility. Now, we may not have caused everything in there, but ultimately everything that happens in those 4 walls are our responsibility. Right. And the way that we craft and maneuver and explain, onboard, offboard, whatever you want to call stuff, we've created those type of opportunities in our school. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, so for me, if that was happening frequently, where I was having people try to negotiate price with me, right, I probably would put that in some sort of communication thing on an onboarding thing or whatever, right. Like we tell people in my onboarding video with regards to, them joining, that we have a 3-strike rule for behavior. We have a 3-strike rule for bringing your materials to class. And we don't waver on those. And I even tell them in the video, unfortunately, there are some parents, when we have to enforce these rules, are not happy with us.
Right.
And I just say, and if you're going to be one of those parents, then this probably is not the right program for you.
Yeah. Because
life has consequences. We all have responsibilities.
Yeah.
And it is, whether we like it or not, we have to, there's consequences for the actions that happen, and we're going to follow said consequences.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in modern society, consequences are not really as bad as they used to be. Like for example, when I grew up, and I'm a little older, well, I'm a lot older than you, but when I grew up, if you had someone look in your face and say something nasty enough, they were getting punched back in the face, right? It was just like I was the type of kid you couldn't say boo, and I was fighting. Like my mom was up at the school picking me up, not necessarily upset with me, but picking me up every other day because I was suspended. I think I got suspended like 40 times one year for fighting and trouble. Not a good kid, by the way. I probably could have not done a lot of the things. It wasn't always someone else's fault. I just like flew off the handle. But there are no consequences. Like, for example, people sign a contract now, and all they need to do is call their credit card company. And the credit card company, like get this, I had a family of 2 that trained with me, trained literally every day, trained for a year, right? Times 2 tuition, right? So 300 plus bucks a month. Their contract ended. They left. About 4 months later, they started strategically charging back every single month that they use. Now, I could almost see their justification if they didn't train and I still charge them. They're like, hey, I didn't use it, but they used it up until the very last day. And I fought the credit card company tooth and nail. I showed them copies of their attendance records, their contract that they signed. You know what they did? Kept zipping the money out of my account until it was all gone. And they literally, like, the only thing I could do, and I probably would win quickly, is sue them in small claims court. And then they probably wouldn't pay me anyway, and I'd get a judgment. And then I'd have to wait around until they sold an asset for me to get my money. So it's like, I don't want to live that life. I used to do that. I'd spend 3 or 4 times a year in court, taking people to court just for principle. Wasn't even for money. It was like, you promised me, you swore to me. But nowadays, people will just cancel their credit card. And then I would text them when they were happy and they were training. They'd be right away, boom, they'd answer my text. Now I text them, no answer. Email them, no answer. Phone calls, they don't answer. And they just decide, hey, well, we're not going to go anymore. So we don't care. And the first line in my contract says basically, this is a yearly membership. It's an asterisk, and it says, this is a yearly membership. You cannot stop just because if your kid is bored or doesn't want to come, if you're busy, and it literally a paragraph on what you have to do. First thing for them to read, and they still go, I didn't know I was signing a yearly membership. And I'm going like, but I told you that, and you read it and you signed it, but cancel the credit card, no moral value whatsoever. And then they walk away. So I'm bringing this up. I'm sure there are a lot of school owners that are listening. This is sometimes what takes away our passion. We have to remind ourselves that they're one person out of all the people, and all the people, like I got a card. Actually, we send out good job cards. We just sent one out, and one of the moms posted it on Facebook, and she wrote, like, this is why Long Island Ninjutsu Centers is such a special school for our family. Sensei Dylan, one of my black belts, wrote a card to my son Johnny, and we got it in the mail. He was so excited. It's hanging on his wall, and she took a picture of it and posted it on social media. So, like, for every bad case, there are ton of good cases. I just want to point that out. But it is hard sometimes, school owners, to have that passion all the time and not lose it when you get beaten up enough.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. So it's unfortunate. We have an emotional business. We're emotional beings. We're trying to help people. And then, we make a mistake and piss somebody off, and it really was our fault. And we ask for forgiveness, and they decide, well, I'm not going to forgive you.
Right.
Or we don't make a mistake, but they believe that we actually made the mistake, and we try to work things out and it doesn't work out, and they still don't like you. To even overcoming these things and them becoming a raving fan of yours in the end, I think, having and again, I don't want to go over boundaries, but having those boundaries drawn and then really following those boundaries are going to help you inside of your business so much, even if it is, I've got to push I know this is horrible to say, but even I can't pay my, electric bill this month. I got to push it off to next month because of X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? I mean, if your electric bill is $400, I don't know, go Uber for the $400 or whatever.
Right,
Like,
right, right, right.
don't lower your standards is what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah.
And then with regards to, your passion and purpose, again, look back at everything that you've already accomplished,
Right.
and go, wow, I can't believe, like, don't just look back at it, like, write it down.
Yeah.
Write down what you accomplished, over the last 3 months, even, and then the last day.
Right.
And really celebrate that. I know it sounds trivial, but it really isn't. And then, you review that progress, renew your goals so that you do not get complacent. Been there, done that so many times, not just once. I've been complacent so many times that I can't tell you what that did to my business. My business would just drop every time that I became complacent. And then I had to really try to get that Price is Right wheel, that flywheel moving again. And it was harder. It was harder the second, third, fourth, fifth time. And I have less energy in moving that wheel than I did when I was in my 20s. Not because I was 20 years old, but just because I was ignorant back then. I mean,
but you also had 20-year-old energy. Like I never realized this until I hit 50. I'm going to be 59 in a few months. And I get tired. Like my daughter, like she's like, Dad, I'm like, honey, I got to go to sleep. And she wakes up at like 8:50 to start her virtual job at 9. Meanwhile, I'm up at 7:30 and I'm like falling asleep on the couch. She's like, come on, Dad, let's watch one more episode of whatever show we're watching. I'm like, honey, I'm exhausted. He's like, you're always exhausted. I go, I'm older than you. You're 24. You got so much energy. Like, I get it. Like, so, but at the same time though, in your defense, as we get older, we start having less energy. And as we pile on stuff on top of our plate, we have more things to think about, and that drains us as well. So,
well, that's why I was saying I was ignorant back then. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know to worry about some things, right? And that's the other thing is like, okay, now I'm seasoned to a certain degree, and I know the pitfalls when that's actually good. But man, it was wonderful being ignorant on some things. I'm just saying.
Well, isn't it always obliviousness is bliss, right? Like, if you don't know, like people are making fun of you behind your back, it doesn't bother you. But if you hear them saying it, now it bothers you, right? Being oblivious, if you could go through life with that type of oblivious mentality, by the way, you could train yourself to not let those things affect you.
Well, you should. You should be what Grandmaster Hafner said to me years ago is just be immune to criticism.
Right. Well, that's why most celebrities don't read, comments. I have a favorite band, Christian rock band, Stryper, that I love to death. And he just recently posted about his perception of the Republican debate. And people were like vicious when they're like, you're a musician, Michael. You should stick to music. Don't give us your political opinion. And he fired back at some of them. He said, listen, I'm a musician, but I'm also a person. I don't just eat, drink, sleep, music 24/7, 365. I have other interests, and I'm talking about it just like you would on Facebook. But people don't want to see that. They want you to just, and I understand he's the light for people's music to make them happy on bad days. They don't want to know he also has an opinion, right? So like they just want him to have a purpose. And I think sometimes for us, that's what we are to people. We're a purpose. We have our own purpose, but our purpose is to make their kids smarter or better. Or if he was shy, take away his shyness. But the minute they don't need us anymore, they could easily disregard us. And I mean, how many people do you know that were staples in your school? They never missed a day. And then one day you never saw them again and you never heard from them again. And they're gone. Like, you don't know, like, what happened to Johnny? I wonder if he got killed in a car accident because I just disappeared. I send text messages to the families, emails, not even a response. Like, thank you. Our time spent with you was amazing. It's like they just went away. Right. So it's a tough, I mean, I hope school owners really understand and this helps them because I think our topic is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it was on my mind and I thought it was quite relevant.
I loved it. We should do more of these. I think these fall into the category of more spiritual and self-help and motivation versus systems. You can only do so many systems. But it was really good. I loved it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you, Allie.
All right, dude. Me too. I'll see you soon. Everybody, thanks for listening.
Right,
bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out Elite Insights for all your website needs. They can be reached at eliteinsights.com. Add Health Coaching, helping school owners create a new and easy to implement revenue stream for your school. Visit addhealthcoaching.com. Lead Hunter Media, your online digital marketer and content provider. Visit leadhuntermedia.com. Academy Kings Growth Consulting and Management Group. They can be reached at academykings.com. And Spark Membership, hands down the best martial arts software for school owner management on the planet. They can be reached at sparkmembership.com. We will see you next time.